And in a week where the Walesers wowed the world with their Wimbledon final appearance, it was revealed that Prince George will not be expected to follow in the footsteps of his father and join the armed forces prior to taking the throne. Speaking ahead of the Prince's 10th birthday this Saturday, a close friend of Will's revealed that George could break tradition by pursuing a career outside the military, even becoming an astronaut if he so chooses. What do you think? Is the Prince of Wales right to allow his son not to serve in the military before becoming king, breaking a long royal tradition? Dan at gbnews.com, vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter. But to debate this now, I'm joined by the editor-at-large at Mail on Sunday, the newspaper that broke that story, Charlotte Griffiths, former UKIP leader and Army Captain Henry Bolton, and the environmentalist Stanley Johnson. So, Charlotte Griffiths, this was a fascinating story. This is obviously part of the modernisation that William wants to bring to the family. Do you think he was also acknowledging the fact that maybe he knows his son might not want to go down that path?
Yeah, maybe William knows George's personality already. I mean, of course he does, he's his father. We don't know George's personality yet, and it might change between now and when he's older. But why should he do this military service? What if it doesn't suit his personality like it didn't with Prince Edward? He's already famous, you know, from birth for the rest of his life against his will, potentially. Maybe he'll love being famous, maybe he won't. He's already got one job that he hasn't asked for, which is to be king. Maybe he'll be thrilled to be king, or maybe he won't want that. And he already has to wear that, like, sort of little suit to events and things like that. You know, there's a lot that's happening in his life, sort of, that he isn't choosing. So I think he has every right to choose whether or not he goes to Sandhurst and
well,
leaves
look,
the military when he grows up.
I'm going to bring Henry Bolton in, because, Henry, you disagree, don't you? You say, sorry, little George, you go and serve. You're going to be king, you go and serve your country.
I'm not quite that harsh, Dan, not quite. Look, you know, I don't think the armed forces particularly want somebody who really, really does not want to be in the armed forces. But you know, the monarch is the commander-in-chief of the British Armed Forces, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Royal Marines. And, you know, to break, for centuries now, literally, the monarch has had previous service, even if it's been brief, within the armed forces, and therefore has a relationship and understanding of the armed forces that's enabled a rapport that I think is really special. We wouldn't want to see the sort of rapport that the President of the United States has with their armed forces. I mean, you know, it's their system, it's up to them, but it's a really important bond, that is, and we see it in the coronation, we see it in the funerals, and we've seen it a lot recently. I think that's important. The other thing is that the armed forces, unlike other areas of work, which, you know, of course, you know, if he really wants to, he can pursue other things instead. But other areas of work, if you like, do not train leadership. And leadership is something that in the civilian world has become almost a dirty word since about the 1990s. Management is the sort of buzzword, and leadership is not. Well, you know, that's
always the case, though. Not always the case. Look at Stanley Johnson's brilliant son, one of our great leaders. Stanley, he didn't need to serve in the armed forces, did he, to learn leadership? Boris, so does George need to do it?
I'm pretty sure he was in the combined cadet force at Eton. I'm pretty sure he did that. I mean, I did that at school. I was in the Air Force School. Actually, I find myself halfway between two of them. Yes, of course, there's a fantastically honourable role for a royal, and particularly for a king, to serve in the armed forces. Actually, my mind casts back to a distant relation of mine, who was George II, who actually, well, I think, was the last king to fight a battle. I think it was in Dettingen, in Germany, and I'm vaguely descended on my maternal side from that gentleman. Yes, I'm halfway between. I think that actually the way to handle this one is to say, there are things, bear in mind where we are now. We are in the year 2023. Bear in mind that today we are seeing these colossal, as it were, environmental crises going on. We've got the heat, and you've been covering it in the Mediterranean.
But Stanley, you're not going to scare me about a bit of 40 degree. I'd love to be in 40 degrees Spain right now. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. I don't do that climate hysteria, Stanley. You know that.
This is my thought.
Okay.
When I was growing up in America in the 60s, what was the big star operation. It was the Peace Corps. It was the Peace Corps, because you could go out and do something for your country. Now, this is what I think ought to happen. 10 years from now, who knows what these international environmental crises will be like. At the very least, I would like to see this country establish, as it were, an environmental Peace Corps. And basically, I think I'd like to see us support an international Peace Corps. And William and George can be leaders.
Henry, you don't think that's the same thing?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it is the same thing. I mean, that's all worthy stuff, and I don't have any difficulty with that. But I really don't. But the monarch is, amongst many other things, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And the armed forces in our country, in our constitution, the armed forces. And having served myself, there is a big thing. Even the reality is that you take orders from the chain of command, which goes up to ministers. That's the reality. But the armed forces take a tremendous pride in actually answering to the crown, to the king, to the monarch. And it would be a shame to weaken that. At the same time, a 3 years service in the armed forces does not mean to say that you can't do anything else as well.
Yeah, OK. Charlotte, what's interesting here, I think, though, is that we are starting to see that William is going to operate his royal family when he is on the throne very differently. So do you think it's possible that, for example, we'll see Charlotte and Louis also work normal jobs and maybe actually not take on a full-time royal role?
Yeah, definitely. A big theme of their marriage is the right to choose and the right to have a normal life. And they chose in the school that they're at, Lambrook, really, really carefully. They took weeks and weeks, months and months to choose that school. It's not a dead cert he'll go to Eton. Nothing's a dead cert. And that's what William was charmed by when he met the Middletons, that they just have the right to do whatever they want. It's a very nurturing family.
Stanley, what do you think as an Eton man? Should George go to Eton, or actually would it not be a much better thing for the modernisation of the royal family to say, no, go to a more normal school, not one with all of you posh boys?
I've got to tell you, Dan, I didn't go to Eton. Four of my sons went to Eton, but I went to a very tough rugger playing school down in Dorset. And I think that was a very fine school because we played rugger till the cows came home. better than Gordonstoun. Well, no, I think this is a really intriguing moment. And by the way, if you're talking about toughness, look at that little boy, Louis.
Yes,
he sat
we like him.
through 5 hours. 5 hours of that match. I mean, I think it's a great match, but come on, man, that guy has a long future ahead of him.
There's another issue there that you've touched on. It's the modernisation of the monarchy, and we're just got to be a little bit careful because
if you modernise the royal family too much, you might modernise it out of existence. That's the issue. Henry Bolton, Stanley Johnson, Charlotte Griffiths, brilliant stuff.
It'll become irrelevant if it's normal.
No, I hear you. Thank you all so much. Who do you agree with on this? Is Prince William right to allow Prince George to not serve in the military before becoming king? Nathan on Twitter writes, Prince George will eventually become the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. He should have military experience. He's agreeing with Henry. From Joy, it's the Prince's choice, and it's as simple as that. William is an excellent father, and his crucial guidance alone will ensure that Prince George is a strong monarch. And from Bruno, I feel military experience is necessary for the role and duties that Prince George has ahead, but the decision needs to be George's alone. And your verdict is now in. 58% of you agree that Prince William is right to allow George not to serve in the military before becoming king. 42% of you say that George should be forced to do so, whether he likes it or not. So, split decision there.